welcome to the Narrowing Path, walking the spiritual walk. My name is Steve Van Einstein, and thank you all for joining me again today as we continue to go through the daily readings for this year from James Allen's Daily Meditations. And May, I don't know if May is going to be able to be topped. I really think May was one of the out of the 5 months so far. February, I remember being distinctively good too, but I think May has been one of the most powerful meditation readings months of meditations from this book that I've read so far. So we got it's a pretty steep, it's a the bar's set pretty high right now, so I'm really looking forward to it, and thank y'all for joining me tonight as we read June 1st reading of James Allen's Daily Meditations, and this will be fresh to me and fresh to you, meaning this is my first time reading or hearing the daily meditation is right on this podcast with you, so you'll get my genuine response, reactions, and observations, and also what I relate to about the reading, of course. So here we go. This is James Allen's Daily Meditation for June 1st. The incentive of self-sacrificing labor does not reside in any theory about the universe, but in the spirit of love and compassion. The spirit of love does not decrease when a man realizes that perfect justice obtains in the spiritual government of the world. On the other hand, it is increased and intensified, for he knows that men suffer because they do not understand, because they err in ignorance. The comfortably conditioned are frequently involved in greater suffering than the poor, and, like others, are garnering their own mixed harvest of happiness and suffering. This teaching of absolute justice is not more encouraging for the rich than for the poor, for while it tells the rich, who are selfish and oppressive, or who misuse their wealth, that they must reap the results of all their actions, it also tells the suffering and oppressed that they are now reaping what they have formerly sown. They may, and surely will, by sowing the good seeds of purity and love and peace, shortly also reap a harvest of good, and so rise above their present woes. The painful consequences of all self-seeking must be met and passed through. Wow. I'm going to say this, June's coming out swinging. Very strong start for June. Anything that's about love and self-sacrifice and this law of justice is going to be a big read. So, I like how he ended it. I mean, that might be just because it's the last thing I just read, but that's sticking out to me the most right now. The painful consequences of all self-seeking must be met and passed through. I love that. We don't get to run away from our turmoils. We don't get to run away from our mistakes. We face them and walk through the consequences of them. And regardless of how painful the consequences are. Right? That's just how it goes. So, here we go. We'll do this again, starting at the top. The incentive of... The incentive to self-sacrificing labor does not reside in any theory about the universe, but in the realm of love and compassion. That's interesting. Because what I think, what I believe, and what I have fallen victim to, and I occasionally still fall victim to, let's be honest here, is the idea that I will get rewarded for my self-sacrificing. I will get rewarded for my altruism. So, in other words, I will selfishly gain by how to say it? I will selflessly gain by superficially giving. Right? That's kind of a hard truth. That was a hard truth. Like when you do things for a reward, it even if it's a spiritual reward, that's what we're saying here. Even if, oh, I'm going to get this because I am acting this way, it's still selfish and self-centered, right? The incentive to self-sacrificing labor does not reside in any theory about the universe, but in the spirit of love and compassion. Your reward for doing something loving is you are able to be loving. The act itself is the reward. To share love and compassion. You find joy and existence. You find joy in reward. You find joy in helping others. And that is as far as we go. We don't do it to bank spirituality later. We don't do it to count down how well we're going to end up or how spiritual we're going to be. Right? We do it for the sake of being loving and for the sake of being compassionate, because that's what we desire to be. All right, now for the main body of this. The spirit of love does not decrease when a man realizes that perfect justice obtains in the spiritual government of the world. We don't get discouraged when we realize these things. We don't shrink at the understanding that there's causes and there's effects, and we reap what we sow, even in the spiritual world. On the other hand, it is increased and intensified, for he knows that men suffer because they do not understand, because they err in ignorance. This is huge, right? This is we've talked about this a lot in this podcast. We've talked about it quite often, actually. The sin, really, the self-serving, self-seeking, all of it comes from a place of ignorance and unknowing, right? And when you know, you can begin to change and take the necessary actions to change. That's the important part. You don't just, I understand now, I'm going to be different. No, there's practice, and there's implementation, and there's work to be done. But you can do that, finally, should you actually desire to. He goes on to say, the comfortably conditioned are frequently involved in greater suffering than the poor, and, like others, are garnering their own mixed harvest of happiness and suffering. I like how he put that, the comfortably conditioned. So those doing well, those that have, in general, less worries, maybe financially, economically, socially, than others do, than the poor. So the more wealthy, material-wise, people have, are frequently involved in greater suffering than the poor. I think that's true. I think the more your materialistic, I believe the more your materialism and your consumerism and the worldly part of an individual is fed, the more unhappy they are. Because it's a constant desire for more. There's never enough. It's not ever a complete picture, is it? It's always on to the next thing. It's always, let's get this other thing. Let's make more money. Let's do this other, take this other trip. And though there can be temporary escape found in those things, until you have a full understanding and a full comprehension of the truth, can you ever truly enjoy those things and enjoy living? And people that have less tend to find it quicker, I believe. Because they have to. those avenues aren't available to them. But it's saying here that they garnering the well off are garnering their own mixed harvest of happiness and suffering. And I like how he does say, frequently involving greater suffering than the poor too. That's the truth. This teaching of absolute justice is not more encouraging for the rich than for the poor, for it tells the rich who are selfish and oppressive, or who misuse their wealth, that they reap the results of their actions. So if they have these fears, if they have these insecurities still, and they aren't doing these right things, or they aren't practicing love and living a righteous life, right? If they aren't doing those things, then, well, we've got an issue. And they'll reap they are currently reaping the results of their actions. Remember that. It also tells the suffering and oppressed that as they are now reaping what they have formerly sown, they may and surely will, by sowing the good seeds of purity, love, and peace, shortly also reap a harvest of good, and so rise above their present woes. So it's a bittersweet pill is what we're talking about here, right? It's hard to accept that you've created your current world. That was one of the biggest things I had to do when I wanted to start to live differently. So I had to accept responsibility and accountability for my immediate current circumstance and situation in all areas, where I was living, how much money I was making, the friend group I had, the lack of friends I had, the lack of involvement with my family, the lack of understanding, perspective, and care I had. I had to take responsibility for all of that, right? And that's what they're saying here. It tells the suffering and oppressed that as they now reaping what they've formerly sown. I had to sit there and say, this is my responsibility. I put myself in this situation. But they may and surely will, by sowing the good seeds of purity, love, and peace, shortly also reap a harvest of good, and so rise above their present woes. So it's a better pill to swallow that you're responsible for exactly where you are. But the sweet side of it is you can change as soon as you begin to do that. The prerequisite for you or for myself to change was I had to accept responsibility now. So that's why it's so bitter in the beginning. It's a painful understanding. It's a painful understanding. But if you sow purity, love, and peace, shortly, much quicker than most realize, little things will start to happen, or maybe even big things, but things will start changing for you, and you won't necessarily even realize it right off the bat. At least I didn't, and many I know didn't. But if you start, your life will change before you know it. I promise you that. And you'll rise above your present woes. I know I have. So, this last sentence is the part about accepting the accountability of the entirety of the situation. It's taking responsibility for your current place in life. The painful consequences of all self-seeking must be met and passed through. That, I think, is what chisels a man out of a boy, a woman out of a girl, whatever representation of growth you'd like to use there, is when you face your consequences fully and you walk through the pain of reality that you've created. When you walk through the pain of your own reality, eventually the pain will stop. When you quit trying to run away and escape and drown or numb it out and distract your way from it, eventually the pain will stop. And that's a blessing that words cannot really capture, I don't believe. But it's a journey. It still is for me. I still have things I'm amending and painful situations that I'm walking through. So, all right. Well, that's the end of June 1st. Yeah, again, it's a very, very an incredible way to start this month. My birthday's in June, so I'm very excited about this month. I usually am. Another lap around the sun done, 35 in a row. I'm very grateful for them. I didn't expect to live past 29, let alone see my 30s. I would have been terrified to believe I could have as good of a life as I do now. So I'm grateful today. But thank y'all for joining me, and I'm looking forward to the journey that's ahead of us this June. That's for sure. So join me tomorrow. Until next time. Thanks.